Day 40 of the Kamala Harris campaign, and she still hasn't done an interview. That was the most fact-free, substance-free hour of television you will ever watch. And the vice president spoke for 16 minutes of the entire hour, and it's so alarming that she might be president because she couldn't even hit the softballs. She could not even hit the obvious questions that were coming. And the only highlight that CNN could put out was a risible comment about the flip-flops. Cut number 21, give a listen to Kamala Harris last night with Domenech on CNN.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time.
Stop.
We did that.
Stop. They released that before the actual interview. And I was so stunned that someone would say, my values have not changed and we need deadlines around time. As opposed to what? Deadlines around space. And of course, John Podhoretz went and found it's about time, it's about space, which is an old cartoon from our youth, which you don't need to know about, an old sitcom. Let me go and play for you what the commentary podcast, now I think Ruthless Podcast, Commentary Podcast, and Getting Hammered, the editors, Dwayne's World, and my podcast are enough to get you through the world. But I really like to listen to John Podhoretz, Abe Greenwald, Christine Rosen, Matt Continetti, Seth Mandel. And last night, they actually did it after the non-interview. And it wasn't an interview. I mean, Domenech must have been told by the network executives, pretend to do an interview. You're going to do your best impression of an interview. There's nothing that it's not really an interview. She did not push the vice president at all. But nevertheless, the vice president demonstrated she's utterly incapable of being president. But here's what the commentary podcast, you should listen to the whole thing for yourself, but here's the summary when they gave grades. Cut number 42.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst thing ever and 10 being she is elected unanimously as president of the United States, how did Kamala Harris do? Matt?
5.
Christine?
5.
Seth?
5.1.
Okay, Abe, our vibe meister, we're going to get to this in a minute, but so I don't want to blow the vibe discussion, but
4.
I'm going to go with 4 also. I'm going with 4.
The great inflation has hit Commentary Magazine. I don't think she passed, so I have to give her a 2. Because there's a level of competence one expects out of a vice president after 3.5 years, that they're at least able to be persuasive that they can do the job. She is a vacuum. She is the repudiation of nature abhors a vacuum because she is a vacuum. She is insipid. Look, there are a lot of tough critiques out there. Tim Murtaugh on Fox with Jonathan Hunt, cut number 40.
I think all you have to do to know how this interview went for Kamala Harris is to go back and watch, I'm sorry to mention a rival network, go back and watch the CNN postgame show where the panelists, all the libs on the panel, tried to convince themselves, they actually openly spoke about it. You know, I don't think she did any actual damage to herself, which is the surest fire way to tell that she actually did do damage for herself. And they said things like, well, maybe she didn't score a touchdown, and oh, maybe we don't like the way she answered that question. It was a disaster. And when she talks about hiring Republicans or fracking or taxes or whatever it is, again, she demonstrated to Americans that you cannot believe what she said because she's saying, I once believed X, I now believe Y, but trust me when I say nothing has changed. You cannot
All right,
trust her.
let's go to cut 42. 43. David Axelrod is part of that CNN panel that Tim Murtaugh referred to. Here is his reaction.
It wasn't a huge, I don't think she moved the ball that much forward.
He's sitting there in real time. How do I say something that isn't untrue, but it nevertheless is not going to get me in trouble forever with all the people running that?
I think the term is fumbled the snap.
Yeah, it was just awful. Awful. I want to go back to special report because we only had, when we did special report last night on the panel with Brett Baer, I was on with Roth Douthat and Amy Water and they're very, very smart people. We only had 2 clips, and there is no news in this interview other than Kamala Harris cannot possibly persuade anyone that she should be president. Cut number 18 from last night's special report. Oh, is it freezing on us? Cut number 38. Cut number 38.
Hugh, there's a lot of interest in this interview. We've only gotten, as I mentioned, a couple of excerpts, and I want to be fair. I assume Dana may have followed up about how the evolution on some of these big issues has changed. But that first answer, that my values haven't changed, being confronted about, for example, banning fracking or not, being confronted about some of these other terms, that's an interesting answer that didn't seem to reach a conclusion, at least in that excerpt.
You're right, Brett. It's a non-answer answer. And I think going into this interview, I think Dana will do a fine job. We'll see the whole thing tonight, and we'll be able to judge for ourselves. But the 2 clips that have been released have done nothing to resolve the essential challenge facing Vice President Harris. I want to draw from history, going all the way back to Johnson. She has a credibility gap about whether or not she has the skill sets necessary to do this job. And to erase that credibility gap and somehow break away from what is essentially a tied race, you're going to have to get people to believe that you have command of facts and the ability to communicate in an effective way. The other clip that's been released where she talks about deadlines around time is already much mocked on the internet, and it's been less than an hour that it's been out there. If there's another faceplant like that in the course of however many minutes she talks to Dana, or if Tim Walz has to pull her out of a jam, that credibility gap about her capacity, her skill set to be president is going to grow larger. And I think the polls show that the convention did not give her the bump that many people, including me, expected her to get. Cut number 16, speaking about whether or not she actually answered that question. Cut 16.
Hugh, despite all of that, Democrats are polling pretty well.
Cut 16. Cut number 16.
You have been vice president for 3.5 years. Yeah. The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work
she didn't answer the question. Go to cut number 17.
I want to get some clarity on where you stand on some key policy issues. Energy is a big one. When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania. Sure. Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking.
I've got to get to Daniel Dale. That's going to be her answer. We finally have an answer. Actually going to get around her tape. No, I made that clear. Daniel Dale. CNN's own Daniel Dale, cut number 41.
The fact check bottom line, Abby, is that she did not actually make clear at a 2020 debate that she had changed her previous support for a fracking ban. So let me take you through this kind of saga. So here's what she said.
Need to. Stop right there. Bottom line. Daniel Dale. No, she didn't make it clear in 2020. So she lied to Dana in an effort to justify that she hasn't changed or flip-flopped. But she has. She has. Let's go to cut number 18.
In 2019, I believe, at a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word.
All right, so you know, she can't explain it. She's against fracking. Her values haven't changed. Her values were articulated in 2019. In 2020, she got picked for vice president, and she said Joe Biden's in favor of fracking. What should, I'm Hugh Hewitt, welcome back. What should former President Trump, Chris LaCivita, and Susie Wiles, his two top campaign aides, take away from last night? One thing, do not interrupt Harris at all. She cannot answer a question. Even underhanded softball pitches she misses. Let's go to the question about the war in Gaza, because this is extraordinary for what it does not say. Cut number 24.
Let's talk about some foreign policy issues that would be on your plate if you become commander-in-chief. President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. But let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. Mm-hmm. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
In the meantime,
and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed since I've been on October 8 to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution, where Israel is secure and in equal measure the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
We have to get to where we can turn water into energy for cars with no emission. We have to get there. We have to get to water-powered cars with no emission. We have to get there. Water-powered cars with no emissions is what we need. So we have to get it. We have to get what we need, and we need water-powered cars so that everyone can have a car. And we need 3 million new units of housing. We have to have them. We must have them, so we're going to have them because we must have them. We got to have them. But how we get there matters. All right? What she actually said there. Well, go back to the beginning of it. Cut number 24 again.
Let's talk about some foreign policy issues that would be on your plate if you become commander-in-chief. President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering.
Okay, stop right there. When you have to say, let me be very clear, you're about to lie. All right, let me be very clear. I'm about to obfuscate. She spoke for 16 minutes last night, and we learned nothing about her, other than she's utterly vapid. We did learn that she will be the most anti-Israel president in history. I want to go to cut 44. This is the most important thing she didn't say. because it's not clear, but give it. Go ahead.
As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters.
All right. What? Play it again so you get an idea. This is the key, and how it does so matters. Go ahead. Play it again.
As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters.
You know, I got to tell you, if you're listening, she then goes on to condemn the suffering of the Palestinians. Not to condemn, but to highlight the suffering of the Palestinians, by extension condemning how Israel is doing its defending of itself. She is from the hard left, and she is utterly without ability to talk to people. And she, out of the entire hour, she got 16 minutes. Governor Walz, by the way, the blankie never broke in, because there was no serious question. He didn't have to stop her from imploding. There's a lot of word salad, but she didn't make a terrible, obvious, well, yes, she did. Cut 21. This is pretty bad. Cut 21.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you're running?
What Dana knows is that she's vapid. And so she's giving her the answer to the question she asked. This is my biggest complaint about a non-interview. Do not give your interviewee the answer they need to give to you in order not to embarrass themselves. Let's go back to the start again of cut 21.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and, by extension, the globe around when we should meet certain standards for...
For a second, you can't set by extension for the globe. You can't, it's stupid. It's just so stupid. China is building coal plants like one a day. They're the principal emitter in the world, and they're not going to stop because they got to feed 1 billion people or are going to have a revolution. India is not going to stop using power. We set the Inflation Reduction Act, and that by extension is for the globe. It's just so stupid. I do not believe, I think she's reached her high water mark. I think it's over. She whiffed on a softball. She whiffed again and again and again in a softball interview. I said this last night on Special Report about the polls that show the race tied. Cut number 39.
Hugh, despite all of that, Democrats are polling pretty well across the board in some of these races that they thought would be tighter.
Well, that takes us back to the issue of polling, and both Amy and Ross have forgotten more than I know about polling, but I'm familiar with the term polling response bias. A lot of people just don't talk to folks. I'm from Ohio. I think Bernie Moreno is going to win in Ohio, but the polls don't show that. I don't know about Dave McCormick, who I talked to this morning on the program in Pennsylvania, but boy, Vance and Trump are there a lot, and the three of them are helping each other out. Larry Hogan was talking to me 2 days ago. I think Larry Hogan is looking pretty good in Maryland. I just don't know that the polls are very useful on a state basis. I remind everyone every time I'm on, a week before the 2020 election, ABC Washington Post, and I work for the Post, had Joe Biden winning that state by 17 points. A week before the election, he won by less than 2/3 of a point. That is the point I make about polling. I don't know that there is no bounce out of the convention, and it's because it was calorie free. There's nothing to get excited about. There's going to be she's going to bleed support slowly between now and the election. Here I am on, what's the date today? The 30th of August. And I believe every day will get worse for Kamala Harris. Every single day. She is not ready to be president. The fundamental, she never will be ready to be president. I mean, what is she, 58, 59, 60 years old? She's never going to be ready to president because you can't put in what God left out. That's a line from Chariots of Fire. You can't put in knowledge, experience, reasonability, rationality. You can't run on cliches. You cannot be this completely without substance. I don't care about the token Republican in her cabinet, by the way. Remember Ray LaHood? Anybody out there know who Ray LaHood is? Generalissimo, pop quiz. You don't get to go on Google. You know who Ray LaHood is?
Yeah, former Republican congressman who ended up as Obama's transportation secretary.
Yep. So that's what she means. We're going to go get Ray LaHood.
Republican, right?
He was better than Pete Buttigieg, but that you get a token Republican.
She'll grab Adam Kinzinger or.
Well, I think he left the party, but I'm just saying, Dana asking that question is a disappointment because it's just
a dumb question.
Dumb question. You should ask: does Israel have a right to attack Iran? What about Iran getting a bomb? What about Xi attacking Taiwan? Nothing. Zero. So she's not going to do any more interviews. She can't do an interview. Can you imagine her doing 35 minutes with me the way I did 35 minutes with Trump a week ago? She just can't do it. You're covering this in Dwayne's World today, right? At length, because I'm too frustrated.
At length. I did a Sherman's March through it. In fact,
Right.
I could have done 2 episodes on it.
Well, I can't. I'm very disappointed in CNN and Dana because I thought she would be tough, and she wasn't. It was softballs, and she couldn't hit the softballs. It was like me playing baseball. All right, if you can imagine me trying to hit major league pitching or minor league pitching or Dwayne pitching, I couldn't. I can't.
You know who Javier Baez is of the Mets?
No. Who is he?
He's a person who can't hit the changeup very well at all. There's a YouTube of him missing a changeup by about 5 feet when he swung.
Oh, yeah, that's me. She couldn't hit a softball. I mean, you used to pitch underhand, right?
Yes, I did slow pitch. So big
you
arc.
Slow pitch softball, big arc. That's what every one of these the ball is intended to be hit. I mean, you try and put a little stuff on it, but the ball is softball is intended to score a run.
It is.
Right?
It is right. It is a run scoring game. But if you were up against me and I'm pitching to you, you're walking back and sitting on the pine.
I am. I'm not getting up off the bench because I don't want to do that. This reminds me of back when Skinny Dwayne was not so Skinny Dwayne, before myphdweightloss.com, sponsor of our show, 864
644. Head turn on the mic.
1900. 864
644
1900. That's
864
644
1900.
If you want to lose weight, you want to lose 50 pounds like Dwayne did, go to myphdweightloss.com because he lost the weight. He's kept it off for 2 years. But back when he wasn't Skinny Dwayne, when he was full-figured Dwayne, that's what we'll call him. Full-figured Dwayne and I went to Philadelphia to do a first pitch. We were doing a bit for our Philadelphia station.
Right.
And by the way, Sea Dogs, Portland Sea Dogs, you ever want me to drive down and do the first pitch? I'll bring Dwayne. I'm not going to do. I'm on WGAN up in Portland.
You still won't throw out a ball?
No, not even. I love the Sea Dogs, by the way. I love driving down to Portland, and I do it a couple times a summer because they're so much fun. It's really a great minor league, AA club, Red Sox. So I don't really like them, but I like to go to the game, and people like minor league baseball. But if they ever offered me the first pitch, I'd have to import Dwayne because I won't do it because I'll throw it into the – I'll do it Tony Fauci. Only I'll make Tony Fauci look good. I can't play baseball. I love baseball. But Generalissimo, full-figured, you went out there and you wouldn't even stand on the top of the mound. You threw it from in front of the mound.
You want to tell them the rest of the story?
No,
Probably
I'm just noting you threw it from the front of the mound, but you did get it to the plate from the front of the mound.
I did, and I threw a strike. The reason I did is because
no, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't really. I'm just saying that he did the easy thing. Last night was the easiest possible interview that Kamala Harris could get, and she still.
It was pre-taped. It was with a friendly network. Dana Bash gave her softballs. It was, every circumstance was in her advantage, and she still whiffed.
And she still whiffed. Let's go back. If you missed earlier, the commentary bros stayed up late. I shouldn't say bros because Christine Rosen isn't a bro. The fellas and Christine stayed up late to do an emergency podcast. And they're like me. They don't want to hear other reactions until I give you my reaction. And I didn't. I did a pre-show with Dwayne. I have given you my reaction that there's no there. She can't be president. She doesn't know how to answer questions. She doesn't have a single thought in that head. And I think that came through, despite softballs. Here's the commentary, collective reaction, cut number 42.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst thing ever, and 10 being she is elected unanimously as president of the United States, how did Kamala Harris do? Matt.
5.
Christine.
5.
Seth.
5.1.
Okay, Abe, our Vibemeister, we're going to get to this in a minute, but so I don't want to blow the vibe discussion, but
4.
I'm going to go with 4 also.
All right,
I'm
great
going with
inflation
4.
completely. I'm going with 2. It wasn't Teddy Kennedy being asked by Roger Mudd and going, That's 1. That's how I read it. That's the worst interview by a presidential candidate in history. This is the second worst. And it's not because she did a face plant on anything. It's because she has no ability to communicate at all. 0. None. All she communicated to me is Israel better watch out because she is going to be the most anti-Israel president in history. How it does so matter. Whoa! I think last night's non-interview might remind people why Kamala Harris's campaign collapsed in 2019 and why, until Joe Biden's incapacity rendered him unfit to run, she was not a serious figure. She's still not a serious figure. There isn't any there. There's no substance there. Softball after softball, and she missed. And she did not explain how she went from being anti-fracking to being okay with fracking. And I cast the deciding vote on a 6,000-page bill that apparently, I never knew this until last night, and I don't know if it's true, that increased fracking. She did what she was told to do. Her values haven't changed. That's the most important thing she said. But the most substantive thing she said is buried in this cut about Israel. By the way, Dana says she's going to ask questions about foreign affairs. She asked 1. There's 1. And so we didn't get to the recruitment crisis. We didn't get to Iran. We didn't get to China. We didn't get to Ukraine. We got none of that stuff. All we got was, I'll go to cut 24. I think it's cut 24. Yeah, cut 24. Play that, please.
Let's talk about some foreign policy issues that would be on your plate if you become commander-in-chief. President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. But let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. Mm-hmm. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
In the meantime,
and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed since I've been on October 8th to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution where Israel is secure.
All right, I
and in
want you to
equal
understand
measure.
this. Ben Domenech is coming up. Ben Domenech must give me $10,000 today. Ben Domenech must do that. We need to get to Ben Domenech writing me the check. Actually, he can Venmo me the $10,000 today. Ben must do that. Ben Domenech is coming up after the break. Ben Domenech, we're going to get there. Ben must give me $10,000 today. Ben will do that. Ben will. We're going to get that done in the next segment. Before we do that, Dwayne, do you agree that Ben Domenech must give me $10,000?
Yes, I think that's very clear. We just have to get to that point.
We need that. And I'm going to give half of that to you once we get it.
Now, never mind the fact that he's been on the show for 3 years and we haven't gotten to do it yet. But if you give me,
Ben's going to give us $10,000 today. We've got to get that done.
We're going to will it to be so.
We're going to make that happen. Ben is going to get that done.
Yes.
All right. Just so we're clear on that, because Ben is going to give us $10,000 today, and Ben is coming up. And we're going to keep him here as long as we need to get Ben Domenech to give it. We need that $10,000. We must have $10,000 today. Ben has every right to his money, but he doesn't have his right to $10,000 of my money. My money. Ben is good.
He hasn't,
my money.
He hasn't fully appreciated the leadership skills that you have as host.
Ben has my money. And you know who else has my money? The Heritage Foundation. Actually, they don't. We have their money. They're sponsors of our show. But I love them. And I put up the interview of Kevin Roberts over at the YouTube Hugh Hewitt channel. Go and find that. Kevin Roberts is fabulous, talking about Project 2025. Go to 25truth.com, 25truth.com. It's a fabulous interview. Kevin's wonderful. The Heritage Foundation is where I broadcast for years until I got my Relief Factor Studio Beltway going. And I love everyone over there. And I love the original mandate for leadership in 1980. I was in law school at the time. I read it. Every time a new president comes in, a Republican might come in, they do this at the Heritage Foundation. And Project 2025 is what all conservative scholars, the universe of them, would like to see happen. Not Trump's document. It is, however, a great compendium of conservative policy solutions. I welcome Ben Domenech to the program. Ben, of course, editor-at-large for The Spectator, Fox News contributor extraordinaire, good friend of the program. Ben, we're going to talk about last night, and I'm going to spend more time talking to you than Dana Bash actually spent time talking to the vice president. But first, I want $10,000 from you, and I want it today.
Okay.
You will send it to me?
Yes. Yes.
I'd like it. I'd like it right now, because I need it, and I want it right now. Do you?
Yes. Yeah.
You don't get it. You're not. You didn't listen to the show. Okay. Here is the biggest faceplant of the quote non-interview last night. Play cut, the short version of cut 24.
As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed.
And then she went on to say, we must have a deal, in the way that I intended for you to say, I'm not going to give you $10,000, but you didn't take the bait.
Well, I have to admit to you that the only reason that I was a little stumbling on this is that yesterday I went on Fox and I said that I will give you $10,000 if Donald Trump is that far behind in Arizona.
Oh, you're kidding!
So I thought that I thought that it was a reference to that. I was like, oh, did Hugh see me on Stuart Varney?
No. What I was referring to is, in the segment before you came on, I said, because it's so stupid what she said about Israel and Gaza.
Oh,
we must have a deal. Go ahead.
So let me just sort of veer a little bit on this. Last night, So as just by dint of your lengthy experience within this field, you end up, getting to know a lot of people who do television production for a living.
Yes.
And my phone last night was blowing up from all these different people who produce television with politicians for a living, who were just going, what is up with this interview? It looks bizarre. And it includes things, by the way, that I listed a couple on X, but the lighting is bad, the makeup is bad, the hair is bad. They have Tim Waltz sitting at the end of the table as if he's the candidate, and she is sort of leaning down and over and looks small. There's a pole in the middle of the table. There's a water cup on the floor. The whole thing just looks thrown together. And, of course, the lead up to this was a month of negotiation and figuring out how they wanted to do this and where they wanted to do it and who they wanted to do it with, as if it was the most important thing in the world. If this was some throwaway thing, part of a series of interviews that she was giving, we wouldn't care about it. But the point is, they built it up. They made this super important. They chose to make it super important, and by dint of doing so, it makes the fact that this was a non-interview where we got absolutely nothing, and where I think, frankly, Dana Bash did not do a great job.
She didn't. I'm very, very disappointed. And I thought she would.
Hey, we complimented her, both you and I, when the debate happened, for being tough and for asking tough questions. She was giving multiple choice sort of options for her,
Right.
Choose your own adventure answers to these questions. And even from the first one about what are you going to do day one, it was this meandering, I just don't think that when she enters a non-produced, non-scripted environment, that Kamala Harris is capable of just sounding like a normal, average politician. And that's really all she needs to be. She needs to be generic Democrat in order to win this election.
Can't do it, Ben.
But
Ben, if it's true that nature abhors a vacuum, she will not be president because there's nothing there. I want to play all of Cut 24. It's the closest we come to substance, and it ought to alarm every friend of Israel. Let's play the entire bit of Cut 24. It's 2 minutes and 14
Let's talk about
seconds.
some foreign policy issues that would be on your plate if you become commander-in-chief. President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I am unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. But let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. Mm-hmm. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
In the meantime,
and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed since I've been on October 8 to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution, where Israel is secure and in equal measure the Palestinians have security and self-determination.
Ben, it's utterly vapid,
Yeah.
and it's
No, I mean-
it's repetitively vapid.
there's more sophistication from the protesters outside the DNC on this issue. I mean, like, and trust me, I mean, I was among them. So this is the thing that I think is so incredible about her and her career. She has failed her way upward all the way to this point in an incredible fashion. Honestly, it's the dog eating the wheel of cheese in Anchorman. I'm not mad. I'm kind of impressed. It's the thing that is it's the thing that is just incredible about this moment where you have someone who on paper should be prepared.
Wait, you've just made me cry. Because it is Anchorman. She is Anchorman. She's the weatherman.
Yes.
It is Anchorwoman.
Go after yourself, San Diego. So no, it's just the thing that is incredible about this moment, which is that she on paper should be ready. Like she's had actually, you were AG, you were senator, you've been vice president for the past 4 years. Why can't you form a coherent, basic thought about an issue that if you had any kind of briefing going into this, and we know that, weeks of briefing and weeks of preparing and all this sort of thing for an interview, for a softball interview that lasted less than 30 minutes, it's the kind of thing where what is wrong with her that she can't even be prepared for something this obvious? This is not a gotcha question. There were tougher questions for Gary Johnson, asking him about Aleppo, and that kind of thing.
I've just got Brick Tamlin in my mind now, and that's all I've got. I cannot. She's Brick Tamlin. That's who she is. She's Brick.
Where'd you get that grenade? The thing that is so disturbing about it is like,
how did she get to this point? How did the country get to this point?
He's on a beach, okay, and we have the female version of Brick, apparently underneath him. Like, who actually is running things?
I don't know.
Doug?
What do you think? How do you think her debate prep people are going to? If I'm Donald Trump or Susie Wiles or Chris LaCivita, and I watch this non-interview, all I do is conclude, I'm not going to say a word. I'm going to talk about what I did and what I'm going to do. I'm not going to say a word about her because there's a vacuum over there. And if I get near to it, I'll be sucked into that fifth dimension of non-entityism.
Hugh, why do you think that she wanted the mics unmuted? Okay. She wanted the mics unmuted because she wants to kind of trap Trump into beating himself up and making stupid comments. But the deal with ABC was to have the mics muted. And we saw how good it was that last time around that sort of played to his best interest, led to restraint on his part, and let him have Joe Biden collapse. And I think that the very same thing, in a different way, obviously, could happen to her, not out of senility, but out of stupidity.
Ben, people were struggling to find things to say that weren't critical about her last night. Here is David Axelrod commenting on the panel after the debate.
It wasn't I don't think she moved the ball that much forward.
All right. So what's that say to you, Ben?
I saw the whole Axelrod comments, obviously, and look, he's a political professional. He's trying to figure out a way to spin it as best as he possibly could, and I don't think that he could. And the reason that he couldn't was because it was just so obviously not what was needed at this moment. The thing with vibes campaigns, which is now an actual approach that is being used by Harris and Walz, is that you are disrupted by the smallest event. If you're running a fundamentals campaign that's about certain issues, you can trip up, you can have a bad night, you can have a bad interview, and then you can just go back to talking about the fundamentals, okay? And I think that actually Donald Trump did that quite well in 2016, and I think that, he obviously, is trying to do that, or I think his campaign is trying to do that this time around as well. And really, up until the naming of Harris, was doing a very good job of it. The problem with Harris is that she is so incapable of sticking to something for very long with any success if it's not scripted, if it's not totally controlled, that she just falls apart. And I think that you look at something like this interview, and again, the huge mistake that they made was building this up so much. the mistake that Joe Biden made was, demanding, you won't debate me and that kind of thing. And it's a false bravado that I think has been an aspect of this administration for quite some time and continued in this interview. It was just not something that I think can be spun in any kind of a positive sense. And for Democrats who have been riding off of the high of switching to her and having a pretty successful, TV-wise convention, logistically a disaster, in Chicago, they now, I think, are going to feel some nervousness, serious nervousness going into the debate.
All right. Now, I too was talking with TV professionals last night, producers, and beforehand, one of them asked me what I expected. And I said, I think Dana will go Brett Baer and will be level-headed, direct, careful, not MSNBC. And I was wrong. And I got asked by the same professional afterwards, and I said, I think she failed. Do you think the network made her fail, Ben? We both work for CNN. I worked with Dana on 4 debates. There are 25,000 people involved in getting ready for an interview like this, no matter how poorly produced it was. I just can't believe how bad the questions were.
Well, as I do, that when you do something like this, there's an intense lobbying campaign about what gets in and what doesn't in terms of questions and in terms of what goes on. And I'm sure behind the scenes there was pretty intense pressure on her. There had to be, to take the interview in a certain way, approach it in a certain way. And I think that there's also kind of a sensitivity on their part that they want to have continued access over the next sprint run to November, and they didn't want to have a situation where they were going to have some kind of tension with the campaign. I will say, the other factor here, frankly, is just that Dana is a good interviewer typically, but I don't think that she's known for being particularly tough. She doesn't necessarily hold people to the fire. I mean, we saw that incident, by the way, from a few years ago with Nora O'Donnell, where she just, laid out the about Kamala Harris's record. And that was a very obvious kind of tack to take. It's not like it was a gotcha thing or anything like that.
She could have done it. She didn't do it. Stand by, Ben. We got to come back and rejoin the live program. Stand by. Ben, in fact, has been talking with me longer than Dana Bash talked to Vice President Harris at this point because we've gone 16 minutes. That's how long the Vice President spoke last night. Ben, let's pay Dana one compliment. She did ask Tim Walz about his lying. And Tim Walz did not do anything to repair himself, did he? I mean, he's a non-entity going forward. He's just a liar.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Tim Walz that is so weird, to use a word that he likes, is that his path to this whole thing basically is doing Pod Save America interviews. It's not as if he had some kind of record of dealing with anybody across the aisle, any kind of a back and forth that would, lead him to some kind of a claim. And he doesn't have the kind of personal life story that is so impressive of somebody like Mark Kelly being an actual astronaut, or, the rising star status of somebody like Josh Shapiro. He gets this job basically based on the fact that he's not going to show her up or be more impressive. And then it turns out that all these stories that he's been telling that position him perfectly to criticize Republicans, oh, how convenient, turn out to be exaggerated, not the truth, or just outright lies. And I do not think that he had any kind of spin moving out of it. Oh, incorrect grammar. I'm sorry, that's not what you did there.
No, and it was so ineffective a response. I think he's done. Now, here's my uber observation. Punch holes in it if you want, because of course it sets aside what Donald Trump may and may not do, or J.D. Vance may or may not do. But as Longstreet's opening few steps on the third day or the second day of Gettysburg, that was the high water mark of the Confederacy. I think last night was the high water, before the interview began, was the high water mark of the Harris-Walz campaign. And that it's going to bleed out.
The flags coming out of their cases, and then you
engage,
and it's just, yeah. Look, I have said pretty consistently for the last month that I still thought that this was an election about fundamentals, and that Trump was going to win based on fundamentals, and I still think that. I do think that Democrats got a boost, out of what they've done in the last month. But I think that one of the other fundamentals, and when I say it, I mean the economy and immigration and security, foreign and domestic. When one of the other fundamentals is this person isn't ready, and I think that at this moment, people want someone who is going to be strong, tough, and ready, and they don't feel that about her. And you can cover that up however you want, with all sorts of production and all sorts of scripting and things like that. But I think people see through it. And look, we live in an age where people talk about how much they want their politicians to be authentic, how much they want to be able to trust them and view them as actual people. And this is the most inauthentic pair of candidates that I think we've seen on the national stage in the modern era. It's just a complete show. And, if the movie works, then you can make a lot of money off of it at the box office on the first week. But then if the movie, gets that, 50% score on Rotten Tomatoes, then the box office drops like a rock. And I think that that's what we're dealing with here. It's a movie that can open big, but it's going to also be, I think, one where word of mouth, terrible.
Oh, my gosh.
Don't go see that. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, Brick Tamlin. And I got to say, I'm going to use that forever, Ben.
Please, please.
I am just, because she is Brick Tamlin, and I don't know, if you're advising her and you begin to see the numbers from last night with people saying, whoa, that's it. What do you do to save her? Do you say, go get more interviews?
I mean, the number one thing that I would have her do, honestly, is get out there individually and have more and more interactions with real people that don't look like her conversation about space with those kids.
It's another Anchorman moment. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Space. But
yellow school buses. Yeah.
Yellow school buses. Yeah. No, it's. I think that's the only thing that I would be advising at this point, because honestly, she seems so inauthentic and so unprepared that I think you have to take a real sharp turn in order to get her to connect with Americans. And I think by the way, one part of that is the whole spin that was around. We didn't talk about it, but the whole spin that has been around this Arlington National Cemetery thing with Donald Trump. I think that is a Streisand moment. I think that they should not have made a big deal about that.
Agree.
I think it reminds people that he actually cares about Abby Gay and people who are suffering, and the Biden-Harris administration does not.
Joined by the poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show, Tarzana Joe. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Hugh. Lots to talk about this week. My hot water heater went out. A check engine light came on my brand new car. But other than that, let's get to the poem, okay? I mean, if I'm not on top of my game, it may be because there are other things on my mind. So bear with me. I once saw a magician. He was really very good, but none of it was magic if I'd only understood that he captured my attention and received a great ovation with some crafty misdirection and rehearsed manipulation. Sparks came from his fingers, and when the smoke had cleared, my card, my keys, my rabbit had completely disappeared. Of all the skills that you might learn, sleight of hand's a dandy. If you're a politician, well, that really comes in handy. You state your firm positions in English, French, and Spanish, then say abracadabra, and just like that, they vanish. I support a ban on fracking. You can't change my mind. I won't. Then comes the hocus pocus, and suddenly I don't. I say we cut the funding for enforcing law and order. It shouldn't be illegal if you want to cross the border. I know that's your position, because I heard it and I read it. Now the mesmerizing media reports you never said it. You rode a wave of fervor, but enthusiasm's cooling. People may love magic, but they don't like all the fooling. It's Magic by Tarzana Joe.
I think It's Magic is a classic, Joe. Is it already posted at tarzanajoe.com?
Absolutely.
I don't think you're going to get any commission requests from the Harris campaign, though.
Hey, I'm up for that inauguration poem for the last 20 years. No, the phone hasn't rung. I don't know why.
We got to work on the former president. If he becomes the future president, I think he will be. You'd make a great poet laureate of the country for a day. I know that you always aspire to that job. I do believe you're the best known poet in America. I actually believe that is a fact. Yeah. But now, if you need a poem from the best-known poet in America, Tarzana Joe. Write him your request at tarzanajoe@reagan.com. Rates are reasonable. They're not going up like inflation. That's Tarzana Joe, all one word, tarzanajoe@reagan.com. How's business, Joe?
It is booming.
For Christmas poems?
No, there are a lot of September and October weddings. I can't believe it, but
What?
people are looking for a good rate on a room, I guess.
Get yourself a poem from Tarzana Joe, including its magic, at tarzanajoe.com, or write to him, tarzanajoe@reagan.com. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to do something that I don't usually do on Fridays. I'm going to take a phone call. The late, great Rush Limbaugh, Open Lines Friday. I've never believed in that. But I actually have no more to say about that utterly insipid interview last night. No, there's nothing more. What do you have to say about it? 1-800-520-1234. It proved to me, Brick Tamlin. I mean, I blame Ben Domenech. I am never not going to think of Brick Tamlin when I see the vice president again. But we've known it for a long time, but I never had connected the two because I only watch Anchorman every 10 years. And so if you haven't watched Anchorman, it's not a PG-13 movie. It's an R-rated movie, and I want you to not let your kids watch it, but Brick Tamlin and the vice president are made for each other. Steve Carroll played Brick Tamlin before he was as big as he became. But that is it. Anchorman. That's what we've got with Harris Walls. Let me check the market while we're getting calls from you folks at 1-800-520-1234. 30-second rules in effect. I just want a quick reaction to what you saw last night. Futures are up this morning. This is brought to you by our sponsor, AmericanFederal.com. AmericanFederal.com sells or buys gold. You need to buy gold today. You do it from American Federal. Their phone number is 1-800-221-7694. 1-800-221-7694. Gold is at this morning $2,553 an ounce. Yesterday, the Dow was up a half a point. NASDAQ was off a quarter, and the S&P was unchanged. Futures are up. I think futures are up because traders realize Kamala Harris isn't going to win. We're not going to vote for a vacuum. We are not going to do that. It was so bad, I just think futures are up. Inflation data comes in today. That might get you to buy gold. But I do believe the Trump economy is coming back. I don't know what that means for gold. I know that if you think it means gold is going to go up, that you're going to call AmericanFederal.com. 1-800-221-7694. A fair price. They'll tell you what it will be. It'll be the market price minus their commission. And they'll talk about the commission depending on the size of your purchase. If you need to sell gold because of the Biden-Harris economy, and there are a lot of you who do, again, American Federal buys gold. And Nick is a trustworthy, they've been doing this for 40 years, buying and selling gold. Nothing special, nothing tricky, no collectibles, nothing crazy. I mean, if you're a collector, a serious numismatic fanatic, Nick will talk to you all day. That's why he's in the business. But if you just want to buy Krugerrands or American Eagles or Canadian Maple Leaves, you call Nick. 1-800-221-7694. Bruce in Whittier, California, what do you think?
I thought it was horrible, and Dana should have asked Kamala about the 15 million illegal aliens she's allowed in the country and how many.
I agree, but
how many did she invite in her house?
I know I know that, but Dana would never have done that. She could have asked for the number. I suggest she asked for the number. And when she asked about immigration, the vice president did the fade. Oh, we did a lot of good stuff. Never said what she did. And we're going to pass the bipartisan bill. There is no bipartisan bill. It's all fantasy. It's absolute fantasy. Thank you, Bruce. Jim in Venice, Florida. What do you think?
Hi, Hugh. Good morning. I listen to you all the time on the way to work, and I think you give these kind of CNN hosts a little bit too much credit that they're going to be fair. Seems like you keep getting snookered. I feel bad.
I got snookered yesterday. Look, Dana did a good job at the debate, the first debate. She did a good job with me, the 4 debates I co-moderated with her. I do not know what's going on behind the scenes. It was not a good job.
Fair enough. Well, anyway, I'll keep listening. Take care.
But well, Jim, she failed the test. But what did you think of the vice president?
I'm sorry, I didn't actually look at the interview. I kind of relied on your assessment.
Oh,
But
okay.
Like I said, you kind of had, higher hopes.
I had very high hopes. I was disappointed, but then again, I have no idea what went on behind the scenes. But she did not ask tough questions. The vice president's still not done a real interview. Peter in L.A. What do you think, Peter?
Hey, Hugh, how's it going?
Well, I'm worried for the country. She might win.
Oh, yeah. No, she won't. She won't. I think the polls are completely biased. I think everything is just biased. They're trying really hard. They're reaching. I went to film school, Hugh, and I saw from that interview, they did edits. It was pre-taped, so right there, it set a red flag for me. She was looking down the whole time when they were asking questions.
Yes, I noticed that. Yes.
So if you look at the light behind her, there's no way you do an interview. The light is going to you. It was behind her, and there was some kind of blur on the table. And when they did close-ups asking a question, she was looking down. She had notes the whole time. She did not have the straight answers in her head. She had to read from the cue cards, and then they did those far-aways. It was a complete...
No, I don't go for that. I don't believe that, Peter. I do believe that she didn't have notes, but she didn't say anything. So you don't need notes when you're not going to say anything.
She didn't answer any question. She didn't answer any question with anything of value. It was
okay, we agree. It was terrible. Let's go to Lenny in Cleveland. Good morning, Lenny. The Guardians are in first place by a game. Labor Day weekend. Miracles happen. That's why I can't put out of my mind the prospect of Kamala Harris being president for 4 years. What'd you think?
Trump presidential. Kamala is an airhead sorority girl, as evidenced by...
Let's not be mean to sorority girls.
Well,
there are the Tridels.
There are Tridels. She is a Tridel. It's a Tridel.
I mean, Trump presided over the wreath laying at Arlington for the Abbey Gate.
Oh, I'm not going to go there. Lenny, thank you. I just wanted reactions to last night. She was terrible. Steve in Sacramento, what do you think?
Yeah, Hugh, people keep forgetting about Kamala and like all these other leftists up here in Northern California, all they have is a bumper sticker slogan understanding of any issue. And you can't get any deeper than a bumper sticker slogan or one of those little placards that they wave on.
Oh, my gosh, it was so bad. All right, Steve, thank you. Tom in Atlanta, 30-second rule. Tom, what'd you think?
We've got a fake candidate propped up by fake media, and they're all funded behind the scenes by fake Americans who want to fundamentally change our country.
Well, I agree with she's being propped up by a complicit media and by big bundlers from the left in order to change the country to what? I do not know, but do you think she can win?
I know. Well, yeah, if enough dumb Americans don't wake the blank up. And, here's a question for her that wasn't asked. With your 3 million housing units, is that going to be enough to house
that would have been
20 million illegal aliens?
I agree. It should. We're never going to get a good question like that out. One last reaction. Bob in Tallahassee. What do you think, Bob?
Greetings, sir. We talk again. You think about Barack's first campaign for the first presidential election. He said it's all on my all on my website.
Bob, you got to be quick. Got to be quick.
I know it was blithering word salad, just like she did last night. She says the same thing. It's on her website. Blithering word salad. Continuation.
I'm glad I did not screen. I'll do one more. David in Missouri. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I thought it was a disaster. It was horrible, but there is one thing that Vanna said that I think Trump and radio politicians should hone in on. Whenever she made the comment about her not being president but commander-in-chief, that's a scary thought in my head.
Oh, my gosh, is it ever. Thank you so much, David. I'm joined now by Sarah Bedford of the Washington Examiner. Follow her on X at Sarah C. Bedford. Sarah, before I tell you what did you think of Vice President Harris' talk with Dana Bash last night?
I think on style, she didn't hurt herself, to be honest. I think she could have easily moved the needle backwards, given some of the, clips of her speaking off the cuff that had been in circulation. She didn't bomb the stylistic part of the interview. On substance, obviously, it was lacking. If her agenda sounded too good to be true, it's probably because it is. She pitched what was essentially like a 2012 era Mitt Romney Republican platform when she was talking about hers. It bared no relation to what the Biden administration has done, what her party wants her to do, her past positions. So it's still really difficult to ascertain where she stands on anything.
You're kind of taking the David Axelrod line. Can we play David Axelrod after the interview was concluded on CNN last night for Sarah?
It wasn't a huge. I don't think she moved the ball that much forward.
Okay, is that what you're saying? That she didn't dissolve into she didn't melt because water wasn't thrown on her. I mean, I thought it was the most vacuous interview I've ever seen, and I believe that Ben Domenech just put Anchorman and Brick Tamland in my mind, and it will never get out. Have you ever seen Anchorman, Sarah?
I have. That's pretty funny. You could also say she's Ron Burgundy because she can only read
Well,
off the telephone.
no. Ron Burgundy's better. Ron Burgundy's better. Brick Tamland she is Brick Tamland. I want to play for you what she said about Israel. The short version of cut 24, please.
As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed.
Okay, so stop right there. What is the conclusion? She thinks Israel is fighting wrong, correct?
Right. I mean, there is really no conclusion there. That's a really calculated answer, not to upset either side. It's how she's approached every policy issue, not to really take a position so she doesn't quite alienate someone, because she wants to be a blank canvas and she wants to be judged on vibes, which is why I don't think that interview was a total disaster, because vibe-wise, she got sentences out. She was fully conscious the whole time. And honestly, that is a good departure from the last Democratic nominee.
Well, you are right. Compared to President Biden's debate performance, it was better. But I think the polls are basically tied. There was no convention bounce. They got all the bounce they were going to get from the relief rally that followed Biden withdrawing. And now she's stuck at 47. I believe she's going to start to bleed out drip by drip. What do you think happens next? Does she do any more interviews?
Well, I think you're right that she's at the high water mark right now. More exposure is only going to start to eat at the enthusiasm that I do think is keeping her numbers artificially high right now, making it look like this statistical tie. I'm not sure if she does more interviews because, it's a very risk-averse campaign. There's a reason why they didn't put her out there for the first 40 days of her campaigning. There's a reason why Tim Walz was sitting there next to her silently for most of the interview, like a security blanket. And there's a reason why they're only agreeing in public to do this one debate. And it's not even locked in. I mean, maybe not even the one debate because they're still fighting over the rules. So I'm not sure she does more interviews. And if she doesn't do anything to move the needle forward, I do think you can only start to see it move incrementally backwards from here.
I think it's going to. Now, if you're Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles, the two senior campaign advisors, or Corey Lewandowski, who came back 3, what do you advise the president former President Trump, after watching that last night, about the debate coming forward?
Well, you need someone who is going to be disciplined in taking apart some of the lies behind what Kamala Harris is now saying she is for and what the Biden administration has accomplished, because she is clearly very disciplined. She did not stray from talking points to the point where some of her answers felt canned and uncomfortable. Dana Bash had to circle back after the very first question to try to get a real answer out of Kamala Harris and couldn't do so. So Trump has to be a lot more disciplined and focus on the fact that she is saying her values, her underlying San Francisco liberal values have not changed. So even if she's saying politically expedient stuff right now, a disciplined opponent needs to point out consistently where those contradictions lie.
I think that's excellent advice. I'm talking about in the debate proper. He can't say a word when she's speaking. Never interrupt her because she has nothing to say. And so just don't interrupt her saying nothing at length. Do you agree with me?
I do agree with that. Use his answers to sort of accomplish some of that dismantling. He has to be quiet on her. And I think her absolute best moment last night was when she didn't take the bait on the question about Donald Trump bringing up the issue of her race. She's not engaging in identity politics. Perhaps they have numbers showing Americans are pretty tired of that sort of rhetoric, but Donald Trump can't be the one then that engages in petty rhetoric, if she appears to be the one taking the high road, that's going to look bad for Donald Trump on the debate stage.